in real time. And so you'll see us continue to market in new DAO. So that is the start of the Fill the Pool event, and it remains to be seen if we'll be asking community members to contribute UNIM to that event. We're still thinking through that. But yeah, the Fill the Pool event is ongoing, and it started with a 10x increase in our liquidity for UNIM.
10 times increase. Wow, that's pretty hot.
It's a start.
Okay. Yes, it is. Okay, another question from another anonymous person. What about growth phase? RBW is down from all-time high. Many investors are upset. How do we return their faith and engagement?
I'll repeat this as many times as I need to. Our growth plans are three-pronged. The smallest prong in terms of, I guess I'll call it investment, is going to be just general awareness. So as I stated in the last town hall, you're going to see several influencers coming online in the coming weeks. You're also going to see various awareness campaigns. We're going to be pushing some marketing dollars behind the wonderful CGI trailer that got great traction on socials. If you're paying any attention at all to crypto Twitter, you have seen us really lean into activating heavier amounts of marketing. You're seeing support from our investors. I was at the Bitcraft Summit and spoke on Tuesday. They tweeted that out. They, added the OX Polygon, obviously, the Polygon Studios team who, gave it a retweet. And so throughout that network, you're seeing, again, us really lean into that. That's the first prong. That's the smallest amount of investment. It's just about building general awareness and is, of course, very typical to any growth strategy. The second and kind of most important prong is this direct-to-consumer marketing plan in which we will be distributing invites to targeted wallets on Polygon that are either playing games that we think are similar to ours or wallets that we view as high LTV, loyal, high retention wallets, obviously discounting and avoiding clear bots, clear flippers, and those who are what I would consider short-term minded individuals. And the beauty of this space is I can query the chain and get all this data and build cohorts, which we will then target. If you get one of these badges, you're going to be able to come to our website and get a free starter bundle. That starter bundle is coming from us market buying existing assets from our existing player base. So again, this is the advantage of Web3 marketing. I do not have to go to Zuckerberg and buy ads on Facebook to get access to a potential player, a potential customer. I can query all this data on chain to see the behavior of a wallet, the type of games and experiences that they play, the type of player that they are, and very specifically target these these cohorts. And then again, we're actually spending marketing dollars with our existing community by buying assets that are being produced. So that is the second of the three prongs. It's, I view, kind of the most important because it's the closest to Web 2 marketing, where I would go, again, I would get a cohort, I would market against that cohort, I would then analyze the retention and the engagement of that cohort and throw out ones that aren't working well and double down on ones that are working well. So again, the kind of direct-to-consumer opportunity here I view as the majority of kind of our growth plan. And then the third and final one, as I've mentioned, and I'll mention as many times as necessary, is quantitative easing and the idea that we will market buy RBW and UNIM and continue to fill the pools, especially in times of in these kind of severe bear market conditions. I've discussed this with community members around the Treasury being very much the central bank of this economy. In times of stress, it's important to ensure that liquidity exists. And, again, one of the reasons I'm not stressing this bear market much is you look at the circulating value of both UNIM and RBW, and it's in the low millions. Our treasury has 24 million in it. Could we buy all of that supply for a couple $1,000,000? No, we would move the price. But again, point out other treasuries that are large enough to actually do that with their economy. And I don't think you can currently find find one with a launched game. Most of the games have way oversupplied those currencies to the market and are in no position to, again, like a central bank would effectively buy assets and put them on the balance sheet, which in our case is the treasury. So that's the third prong. Again, the second prong, the direct to consumer marketing efforts are really the focal point of the strategy. It's where we have the most control. And I think is going to be where you're going to see the most marketing spend, but you tie that with the kind of central bank movements of the third prong, as well as awareness campaigns in the first prong. And I think we have a path to growth and success on that front. The last thing I'll say is that every single person here should go out and onboard one person and double our DAO. Let's just see what happens in that experiment. If everyone here continues to put everything on us, the developer, to do and grow, it's the whole John F. Kennedy speech, right? Ask not what you can do for your country or what your country could do for you. Ask what you could do for your country. Of course, I'm going to screw that up here live on a town hall. But again, don't put everything on us. Go out and acquire some users yourselves, right? I have a plan in place. I will answer that question as many times as I need to, but I hope everyone can take forward the three-pronged marketing growth strategy and answer these questions for people who come in and have them, because I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over and over again on it. Let's roll the next one, Barkley.
All right. Cool. So you heard that, Unicorn fam? As an aside, Sparkly Unicorn is looking to acquire some users for crypto unicorns. Who wants to be acquired? Wink, wink. All right. You mentioned that you spent some time at the Bitcraft Summit. Can you tell us more about that?
It was, it was a really wonderful event. Obviously, for those who don't know, Bitcraft co-led our seed round along with the Delphi Digital team, who many of the Delphi team were also present at the summit. So it was great to just kind of reconnect with everyone in person. It's also great to meet many other Web3 gaming entrepreneurs. It's really my first experience at these conferences where I tell people what we're doing and they immediately are like, oh yeah, I know what crypto unicorns is. And many of them held corns. Many of them asked for a lot of advice and tips on approaches. A lot of them are much earlier in the process and have yet to, really launch or, even kind of ship their first NFTs. And, again, as brutal as the bear market is, we certainly timed things right earlier in the year in terms of getting our pre-sales done, our token raises done, and positioning ourselves to, really be capable of kind of wintering this bear. So it was a bit of a sobering thing to see other entrepreneurs in the space not only view us as something that they want to, as a goal that they want to achieve with their own games, but also just recognizing how hard it is for a lot of these projects that didn't move as quickly as we did and haven't really established their brand and their IP in the space yet. But no, it was great. A lot of wonderful connections made, and it was wonderful to kind of see the positive reception to, crypto unicorns, and also to just be a part of something that people very much recognize and know in the space and view as a top project in the space. So it was great.
Aw, and that's so heartwarming. So we went from having goals to being goals, and we just keep going. I see that you were wearing a hat. Were you repping Crypto Unicorns merch?
Of course, I didn't have my hoodie on because it was too damn hot in New York. So I was sweating the first day with both the hat and the hoodie. The second day, I just rocked the hat. But absolutely, it made it easier for me to find at the conference.
The trademark hat. Ooh, that's gonna be a meme. I know it. All right, let's have another anonymous question. Hi. Do you not think it would be better to have an RBW USDC pair in the bear market because the ETH price decrease impacts RBW price a lot? And looking at RBW ETH chart, we can only see the valuation of RBW.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things on that. Point a gaming token that isn't moving down relative to the price of ETH, because I'd love to check it out and see if there's a way for us to modify our token economics. But truly, please point out one that isn't moving down relative to the price of ETH. If we were RBW USDC, the impermanent loss would actually be far higher for LPs right now because ETH has also moved down in this market. USDC would not move down in a bear market, and so you would end up with a far higher quantity of RBW and far less USDC. So again, you would be exposed to way more impermanent loss than current LPs are, because at the very least, wrapped ETH is down where USDC wouldn't be. And more than happy to dive into that if people have follow-up questions, but you really need to understand the concept of impermanent loss on that front. So generally, you actually have less impermanent loss in a bear, and you have way more potential over the long term with wrapped ETH and its potential to appreciate over time, to see the value of your LP tokens kind of grow relative to your entry. So again, I don't think it is a good idea to do USDC RBW, and it would not have helped LPs in this bear market. It actually would have hurt them way more than the current wrapped ETH RBW position.
Completely understandable. Speaking of follow-ups, for everybody who is an anonymous asker, feel free to DM me if you have any follow-up questions to the questions that you asked. Okay, next up, another anonymous question. This is the last one. If possible, can we have a slight look on what the incentives are for hatching shadow corn eggs? Is it going to be rarity dependent or common to mythic as the same reward?
It will not be rarity dependent. It is on how quickly you responded to my request that you hatch your shadow corns.
Do you think it might be too late?
We are going to take a snapshot relatively soon, and after that snapshot, you will have missed this opportunity. And I'll leave it at that.
Oh, you heard that, boys. We're going to take a snapshot soon. So if you haven't hatched your shadow corns yet and you want to take advantage of those incentives, better start hatching. Okay, that is the last of the anonymous questions. Now let's move on to the written questions. This is from Crazy Crypto. Sex demands for a higher demand of RBW before considering collaborating with CU. How is the progress for this?
Oh, centralized exchanges. Okay.
Oh,
What did you just ask
sorry.
me? We have a path to listing with one. We'll have to pay a little bit of a listing fee, but it's really marginal relative to some of the others that have been offered up. So we have a path there. I think the question is true with respect to some of the largest exchanges, as they will normally want to see higher amounts of volume on a consistent basis because that drives fees for them. And so usually the rule of thumb is the higher volume and liquidity that you have, you're going to be more attractive to being listed on a centralized exchange, given that correlates obviously with fees. On the lower end, kind of where we're at today, we may have to pay listing fees. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars in cost just to kind of scope that for people. So it's not $1 million or even a multi-$100,000 outlay at all. So I think we have a path on that front. We've also begun talking again with several market makers, which could be a helpful way to more rapidly bootstrap liquidity and kind of network-wide volume, because a centralized exchange will kind of look at volume across all the DEX listings and things of that nature. So we do have a path on that front, and I don't think we're getting blocked based on current volume and things. So I'm really hopeful that we can see that turned on in October, but as we've seen, these centralized exchanges move very slowly and have somewhat opaque processes. So I can't really commit, given the experience that we went through with Huobi as an example, which was just kind of a nightmare to get right to the end and then kind of get blocked. I think it's very likely that Huobi will turn around and list us after this much larger exchange that we're talking to does. So it's something that's a focus of mine and our COO, Chris. So we are paying very close attention to it and pushing it forward as quickly as we can. But to kind of, again, reinforce the answer to the question, like it's not the current state of the market, the current state of volume in our pools and stuff is not looking like that is a blocker to us getting a listing on centralized exchanges.
All right. Okay, here is the line of questioning from former Ponzi Donner. I would like to know more about the direction that the team RPG is going. I was a bit shocked to see those videos last week, which were way below my expectations. Could you explain how that can become a competitive game that keeps us and new players engaged, since it
Yeah, I'm
should be a
so
key
happy
part of
to
the game?
hear. I know what the question is, and I saw this comment on Twitter. Like, you are literally seeing the earliest possible pre-production, like we just got from paper to something on Unity WebGL. It is supposed to look awful. And I find this funny, and I realize that just about everyone in this audience and in our community hasn't actually built games. So you have never really seen what a game looks like at the earliest phases. I did tell our CM team to not post the early stuff out to Twitter because at the end of the day, we're going to get the peanut gallery coming in and assuming that that is the final product. So, Farmer, you and I are on the same page that that was nowhere close to the end thing. But at the end of the day, if you really want to embrace community-led, game development, and we want you guys to be very early into this, you're gonna see some stuff that doesn't look great, right? Very, very typically, it takes a while to hit the quality bar. So I guess I will say, you and I are not on different sides of the fence. I'm in agreement with you that obviously that was very, 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 very early footage of the Team RPG loop. But again, the comment on Twitter was very kind of frustrating for me to see. You need to pay attention to how you rep our brand external, right? And again, reinforce that this stuff is very early. We can either not show you anything until it's ready, which I think is a mistake, or we can show you early things that aren't necessarily going to look great until they do. So generally, like, let's be a little more cognizant of comments that we make on crypto Twitter, please. And I will and have asked our marketing team to not share the early stuff on crypto Twitter. We will continue to share it in Discord because I think it's important for people to actually see how games get built versus waiting, waiting, waiting. Here's something ultimately polished. I'm fully aware that we will immediately get compared with games like Alluvium and others that are in the auto battle, auto chess genre. There is no question that the quality bar, of course, needs to come up. Again, this was very, 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 very early. I hope that answers your question, sir. But I saw it on Twitter and I was hoping it would get asked in the town hall so I could address it.
All right. Oh, thank you so much, community. If you have any questions, though, about the updates that we roll out, feel free to ask us on Discord. The
Yeah, I
other
think that's
day,
the perfect form. Just to double click on that, Sparkly, like that's the
Mhm.
perfect form to ask those questions. And I don't want somebody to hold back and go, oh, like it's fine to come in here, farmer, and say that doesn't look great, right? Like that's fine, right? But external, everybody needs to understand you're all marketing vessels for this game. Let's not try to, throw out complaints to the wider crypto Twitter market. This reinforces some of the questions around growth. The quickest way to grow is every single one of us being evangelists for this thing. We all have baked and aligned incentives to do so, right? That is how this space moves forward and kind of grows and things. Now, internal in our Discord, feel free to call things out for sure. And we'll continue to share early footage, but we will be very cautious about sharing things out to crypto Twitter because people external to our community will show up and make an assumption that that's like our target or we're like excited to show it off. So again, a little bit of course correction on our side. Let's be really cognizant of how we comment on in progress footage external. And again, I think once the jousting in-engine gameplay trailer launches in the coming weeks, most people will understand what the quality bar is for like all of our game loops. And sorry, the last thing to say on this is these are playable prototypes. The Altitude Games team is responsible for getting a playable prototype in the hands of the community that shows the mechanics of battle. And I want people to come away from that going, okay, there's strategy here in how I build out my squads, in how I can via skill, beat a player who maybe, brought a suboptimal synergy in or placed them suboptimally relative to, me. I put my two tanks up front, I put a thorn mid center, right? And I put two supports in the back. And so I'm just going to absolutely crush someone who fails to kind of stand up to that. These are, again, meant to play test so that the community ultimately chooses whether we go with the auto chess auto battle, the original vision, or the match three team RPG style, right? Then our game team, Laguna Games, is ultimately going to build team RPG, right? So yes, the quality bar is going to come up greatly from what you saw, just to get to kind of the playable prototype. But again, it is a playable prototype, and that is, usually very, very early in the game development life cycle. And we will take the results of that playable prototype and then build the actual loop with the core games team. So again, like we need to set expectations correctly that like Altitude is not building and shipping, the fully featured, fully realized Team RPG. They're shipping these two prototypes so that we can collectively work together as a community and determine what's going to um, uh, be ultimately the battle loop that the core team builds. So sorry for the extra rant, but I really want to make sure that expectations are set on that front with the community, and we all understand what Team RPG was about. Like the opportunity is to again play test with the community and determine what's going to be the most successful loop, rather than us just guessing and getting far along in the development process and delivering something that may not be the best match with our IP and our community. So anyway, great question to ask. I'm glad you did, Farmer. Thank you.
All right. I hope that answered your question. That answers your question, Farmer. Um, they do have a follow-up to that one. So they're also referencing not just the looks of the game, but also the dynamic or gameplay. It feels like this is kind of like a really deep topic, so maybe we can move this to after the AMA. You can talk to me, and then we can like figure out what the community thinks about that. Uh, that good?
I mean, that works for me, right? We obviously have James, Jeff, and others on the design team that can be poked around this stuff. And I think as updates get shared, we are very interested in soliciting feedback, particularly around battle mechanics and the overall, game design in general. And again, all of these projects are in pre-production. Pre-production is very early stuff getting built and a lot of documentation and all these kind of things. When we exit the pre-production phase, there'll be kind of this round of, here's the overall battle design, and players can look at that document. Effectively, you're getting access to game design documentation. Again, like no one else in the space is doing this because it's crazy to do with the community, but we're going to try it. And so at that point, Farmer, you're going to be able to read the damn design document and get really deep in it and call out potential concerns or questions that you might have. I think what we're going to do as well is have some follow-up actual AMAs with some of the core team that's building this and members of Altitude and things of that nature. So again, we're very early in the process, and you're going to see more and more of that over time and get opportunities to kind of put together feedback so that we can be collaborative in this process for sure.
Definitely doubling down that collaborative part. Yesterday, I got to talk with the community about a couple of concerns that they had. Oh, Farmer FPD says thank you for answering all of those questions, Aaron.
No worries at all. Like I said, happy that it got asked here so we could kind of chat about it.
Hmm. Going back to that collaborative idea, I got to talk with the community, and I feel like it was very productive because they were able to suggest a couple of ideas and point out some blind spots where we were able to we can provide more transparency. So that really helps us out as part of the CM team, and I'm sure it helps out the rest of the LG team as well because I also cascade information to them. So thank you so much, everybody in the community who was able to talk to me last time. And last night, I was also able to summon my liege, Laguna Jeff. So Laguna Jeff came up to general chat and answered a couple of questions for the community as well. We are trying to make this a more regular thing. So be on the lookout, community. Okay, another question from GD Verse. Does CU plan to implement jousting with no new UNIM slash RBW minted? Entry fee will be the jousting ticket, then the winner will get the prize pool and burn some percentage of it.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. There will be either RBW or Unim entry fees for all the tournaments. In some cases, it might be RBW and Unim. Let's say it's a 16 corn tournament. All 16 are going to put up the same entry fee. And then there is a 10% rake into the treasury of whatever it was, RBW and Unim. And then obviously the redistribution of the rewards from, the 15 losers to the one winner. So let me know if that didn't answer the question, but that's kind of how I understood it.
Yeah, me too. All right, that's
Cool.
perfect. Big MC19 asks, Aaron has mentioned specialization in the past, but currently it's the opposite in crypto unicorns. For example, if I decide to specialize in farming, I can't level up my farm plots to the top levels without artisanal wood or toadstools. Therefore, I also need to be crafting. Not everyone wants to be crafting, but currently we have no choice. When can we see new materials added to the RBW marketplace to allow specialization to be possible?
We're constantly monitoring the amount of items. For example, the higher tier boosters, there's just not enough there for us to create a liquidity pool. We are looking at running um, events that help generate the liquidity so that those pools can kind of get created when there's like enough of the items that actually exist. Because we don't want to just be kind of creating the pools out of thin air without enough. Um, Players actually holding the items to be able to, sell into that liquidity pool. So we will add to the RMP marketplace over time. I mean, you're going to have a lot of updates soon. The seed bags update, is giving, you a new item to craft. There's going to be an update that kind of follows that takes the base tier materials and makes them something that you actually have to grow on the farm, so it won't just be seeds and berries anymore. You're going to have these kind of choices around planting, for example, a sapling, which has to be cut down to get the raw wood planks, which feed the crafting system. It's a little silly that some of those items, at the base of the crafting tree effectively are just kind of being minted out of thin air, based on the inputs. And so adding that additional level of depth where you're having to effectively grow things on the farm that feed into those initial tiers, I think is going to be like really helpful. So that's adding, items kind of on the base end. But yes, over time, we will add more items to the RMP marketplace. Right now, players are not crafting enough of them that we feel like it's necessary. And so we are considering these events that will see people craft enough of those items such that we can then add or create the liquidity pools where there's enough kind of items within the economy that were player created versus us just minting a bunch of these out of thin air to create the liquidity pools. So I hope that answers the question. Do let me know if there's a follow up. And I love that chat is showing Puzzles and Dragons or the Puzzles and Dragons clones. Um, oh
Yeah,
man, that's the version that I hope wins, but ultimately it's up for the community to decide.
that's to the community, definitely. Okay, next up is a question from Jackie Ace. Jeff mentioned that Tier 6 boosters will likely never enter the RMP. I understand the incentive to keep upgrading the lands, but if I want to build a house, I don't need to go cut the wood myself. I pay people for it. I also understand the limited nature of the current CU economy, but with jousting, the economy should be much deeper than right now. You want people to specialize, but that's not possible if not everything is tradable. There is no edge building this way. People should be free to choose if they want to craft something or pay for it. That's how economies work. Could you please elaborate on why limiting accessibility beats natural market dynamics to get the true value of these boosters?
I think my point is the same. I mean, I see what you're saying, Jackie, but at the end of the day, like I can look and see that there's, I think, under 100 tier six boosters that exist right now on players' balance sheets, right? So the ones that are getting crafted are getting spent. Um, I probably agree with Jeff that tier six, why add a liquidity pool there when it's more valuable for us to ensure that there's a unim sync, right, for those crafted items. Like the more we allow or mint these items from thin air to fill the other side of the liquidity pool, right, when we pair it with RBW and create a new one, we're removing all of the inputs. Um, excuse me, all of the sinks that would have been input up the tree to get to that tier six booster, right? So we have to be very cognizant of that. If I go and give you the ability to purchase these things, yes, it potentially leads to RBW being sunk, but we have to absolutely balance that with the input sinks in the crafting tree that would have been that are getting removed because again, you didn't have to go through that. We minted these things. That's why I keep reinforcing that our desire is to structure in-game events where the community is going through and creating a bunch of these items and basically handing them to us to rank up on a leaderboard, which allows us to create the liquidity pools where the soft currency, in this case, tier six boosters, was like, or tier five boosters, or whatever it ends up being, was crafted by the community. So we're not removing all of the economic sink that would have occurred had the community generated them themselves versus us creating them out of thin air. So I hope that helps clarify. Like that's how we kind of view it. Running these events where the community is effectively creating the liquidity for the pool keeps the economy way more balanced than us minting things out of thin air. Um, so anyway, happy to drill deeper on that if I didn't answer the question, but that's how we're currently thinking about it.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. As Momo from General Chat says, I like that it's like that so whales can't just swoop in. Work for it, baby. Thanks,
Yeah, I
Momo.
mean, everything is in balance, right? We talked a lot about this during the Bitcraft Summit, how you kind of manage these different things. Like Jackie is saying something that is very true, and that some players are going to come in and just want to purchase and progress, right? So I'm not disagreeing with Jackie's point on that front. I'm just saying the way we tee it up should be via these events where the community is effectively generating the liquidity so that we aren't minting the new stuff just out of thin air and removing the economic sinks that would have occurred had players done that crafting. So I think we kind of address everyone's concerns with that because we didn't limit the economic sinks in the economy or remove them from the economy. Players compete in an event. We have these nice leaderboards. You get rewards for that event, for say crafting the most boosters or whatever it ends up being. Then at the end of that event, we kind of create the pool. And again, it was like community created. I think that's the optimal scenario here. There is going to be an event that the design team pitched me yesterday, which I think will predate the first RMP build inventory kind of event or build liquidity event. But you're going to start to see more and more of that here in the coming kind of weeks and months. We also track the progression of players and who actually needs access to those items, separating boosters like some of the higher tier items that aren't available yet in the RMP store. And you're going to see us, again, run similar events to generate the liquidity for those and then create those pools versus out of thin air.
Makes sense. Jackie Ace has a follow-up. Wouldn't specialization also lead to more of a unim sync? People who buy and spend RBW, which then increases the price for the boosters and incentivizes specialized players to sink even more unim because they craft more.
It absolutely does, but if you again, if we create the pools out of thin air, there's less of a sink than if we run the event to generate the pool. And then what you're talking about happens exactly. The only difference is there was more sinks in total because people actually had to craft the things and effectively give them to rank on the leaderboard to us so that we then build the liquidity pool. So we're arriving at the same place because you're absolutely right. If the price is going up, great. But it's also a factor of how much liquidity you put in, right? If we make it really thin, there's only like 100 tier 6 boosters or tier 5 boosters against whatever amount of RBW, like the price is going to be incredibly volatile up and down and up and down and up and down. And I would rather run an event, sink a bunch of inputs, not just Unim, but all the soft currencies involved to create the liquidity pool. And then from there, the market dynamics absolutely take over, as you mentioned. But my way sinks more soft currencies in Unim than us just minting things out of thin air. So that's the only thing I would mention on that front.
All right. We have a follow-up question for that from Delete. Shouldn't the team consider players spinning up services that will allow players to use T6 boosters? For example, I craft T6 boosters, but then negotiate with stop editing your question, but then negotiate with another player to custody their core and use the booster and send it back for a fee or premium. Need to account for this as the team is forgetting that they could earn an RMP fee on these. Instead, they're giving the fee premium to a secondary market.
There is no secondary market outside of the RMP, so I don't really understand the question, right? Yes, if it's in the RMP, there's a fee associated with it, great. But again, there is no ability for you to take a tier 6 booster out of the game and do that, right? They're not keystones. So again, I'm not. We will add items to the RMP over time. We have access to all of the data. I'm very excited to get the data warehouse out there so other people can kind of look at the same data that we are looking at. There's a little bit of trust you need to extend, and we're also getting very caught up in the idea that the RMP as it exists today, and even the items that you guys are advocating to get added to the RMP, is like a tiny, tiny subset of the total potential items that we'll be adding over time. So, again, I'm not directly disagreeing with any of these points at all. I think it's really just a matter of time before you see more things in the RMP market.
Okay. Oh, so he's clarifying he can custody someone else's corn and use a tier 6 corn in it. So that's sort of like a secondary market. Just something to consider. And Jackie Ace has a last follow-up. I agree on not minting them out of thin air. After the crafting event, it totally makes sense to create liquidity through players. The point was just that saying we never put T6 on the market might not be a good decision. If it's included in an event, that might be a good idea. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, definitely same page. And I hear you on that, Jackie. I'm meeting with Jeff today, and so we'll kind of talk about it again. I think it's like a timeline thing, and yeah, I don't think anyone's sitting here and saying it will never happen. So yeah, it'll be something I bring up in our economy sync today.
All right. The community really gets fired up for the econ questions. I noticed that.
Well, it's
They
the crux
absolutely
of
love
how we
it.
will succeed or fail. And I mean, I really appreciate people, being focused on them. I think we have shipped the deepest and most complex economy in the space to date. I challenge anyone to find one that is deeper. And there's been some really wonderful things to see, like the prices in RBW of soft currencies have not just collapsed to zero. We've seen certain commodities increase in price. There have been players we've identified who've put forward very smart strategies. Those who are like crafting and hoarding dewdrops in advance of kind of the next big progression push amongst the community, really made out well because the price spiked. And so it's been great to see like actual market dynamics taking over. Even as RBW has dropped, the overall market has collapsed. Like taking the price of RBW every day, we've seen we're now pushing 6 million in RMP volume to date. Again, that counts the price of RBW every single day on which that volume occurred. And again, with just like 2,500 monthly active wallets, roughly 1,500 to 2K DAO, like that's really incredible to see as kind of a starting point. And then when jousting comes out, all of a sudden you have these potion commodities that are needed. Like there's additional depth for the farmers that are looking to craft things and sell them on the open market. And you have an item that really should be in high demand because with one potion slot to start, like I don't know why you wouldn't at least have one of the potion options. Potions have tiers. So again, there's going to be a lot more depth on that front. That's just the first battle loop. The question that was asked earlier, and forgive me, I forgot exactly who asked it, but it's important to reinforce that they asked something very important, like, are we going to be minting more UNIM and RBW for the tournament battle loops? And the answer is basically no, right? Because the entry fees get redistributed, right? That's kind of how things flow. And that means that only in the case of kind of leaderboard events will we add that, but it'll probably be things like loot boxes, golden tickets, potentially keystones, and these things. We're also thinking about, again, I might start market buying some damn shadow corn eggs to add as prizes and things of that nature, buying higher tier mythics and things off the open market. Like there's a lot of ways that we can create structures where we're not necessarily inflating the supply of the currency. But that was a really great question to ask, and it's important because it's really the farm sim in combination with these PvP battle loops that I think leads to economic stability or sustainability over the long term.
Yeah, completely agree. That question was asked by GDverse. Thank you so much, GDverse. Next up, we have Urinal requesting to speak. Please come over to the stage. Hey, good evening.
Hello, hello. Yeah.
Hi.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I'm a bit late to join the tunnel, so I don't know if someone already asked regarding gathering cards or related questions. But my question is there any update or nerfing this past update regarding gathering card items like RNG or something related? Since this past few weeks, based on my experience, I'm getting trashier gathering card items lately. Then my second question is, will there be any update in gathering cards, especially regarding the item RNG percentage per level of card? Since currently I cannot feel the difference between a level 5, level 4, and level 6 card. My level 5 card was even getting better items in this past few days than my level 6 card. I'm expecting a level 6 card that will outperform the level.
Hello?
Uh,
Oh.
yeah, I think I got the gist of the question there, Urinal Ball. That is one of my favorite names. So when you're upgrading, right, a gathering card is variable rewards, right? So in our data tables, there is a band of, from X to Y of, let's just say, the amount of UNIM or RBW that is possible at a certain level, right? So you're absolutely going to run into cases where maybe a level 5 was doing better than a level 6. That is not a bug. That is a really poor RNG post the level upgrade to 6, because there's going to be some overlap in these bands. They're not fixed amounts. I've seen this discussion, and I know LG Jeff responded to several of these comments. Like, the costs always increase exponentially, and you're not going to see the reward increase exponentially, because at the end of the day, the cost is a one-time thing, and the number of gatherers is then only gated by you continuing to send unicorns over to do that. So anyone looking at gathering and really trying to build a strategy around what you're getting, like, that's not going to work super well, because first off, the rewards are variable. We will continue to modify those. I do not want a system in which you can show up once per day and do gathering and bounce out of this experience and do well. So that should be a signal to kind of all people, especially like with quests and stuff coming online. There's going to be more complexity in finding the right group of unicorns and the right inputs to go on these quests to get certain things. And the gathering cart, generally, we're probably going to look to introduce more risk, higher variability in rewards, because again, I don't want a system where, again, yes, the costs increase exponentially, but you pay them once. And then at that point, you've gotten to level 10, and you're able to, like, if we were exponentially increasing rewards alongside the exponential increase in cost, it would be a disaster and immediately collapse the economy. So, the 5 to level 6, like, generally on average, as you increase, the rewards across the board will get better, but they are set in bands, and then there are via RNG, you're going to land somewhere in that band. And there are overlaps in the bands, particularly from sequential levels. So from 5 to 6, there is going to be an overlap. But generally and on average, and of course we see this data for all players, and it's absolutely true, you're going to have higher gathering rewards at higher cart levels.
Okay. That's all for my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
All right. Thank you so much, Urinable. Okay, time check, everybody. We have 11 minutes left for this AMA. I'm going to take, for this town hall, I'm going to take 3 questions, 3 written questions, unless somebody requests to speak. So next question is from Sigarian. Hi, Aaron. You announced that the data warehouse last week. You announced the data warehouse last week, and I'd like to know more. Could you provide more information about the data warehouse? What kind of data will this provide to both tech-savvy users and our regular users? Will this provide some API system for Excel warriors to draw data into their sheets, or will we have to wait on the community to create some of these features?
Okay, so several questions there. Let's start with the data that it will contain. So we have an SDK that's it's Delta DNA, which was analytics company bought by Unity. So it's kind of the easiest SDK to integrate for tracking client-side events, right? So everything on chain, of course, is already visible and queryable, but right now anything happening off chain and in the game is in a black box. So the warehouse will effectively have all of the data that we get from that SDK. We are de-identifying it in that you're not going to be able to look up a specific wallet address, for example. So part of that is just to make sure we're fine with things like GDPR and the data privacy kind of rights globally that many countries are pushing on now. It is a little awkward because everything, of course, on chain is fully public. So there's a little bit of an argument that why not just make everything offline? But we are de-identifying that data. So you could see things in aggregate. You're going to be able to see the number of gathering events, the number of RMP buys and sells, the number of like literally any action in the game, the number of seeds that are being planted, the sinks and the sources. And so all of that data will be and exist in the warehouse, which gets an hourly update. So it'll be updated every single hour and of course be up to date on the hour every hour. To answer the second part of the question, we are not initially going to have APIs that are easy for the spreadsheet warriors to build. I'm kind of hopeful that members of the community put forward updated charts and dashboards, and some have expressed interest in kind of doing exactly that. So my hope is the community kind of takes care of that for us. We do have a data engineer on the analytics team who could potentially do that work, but we have not scoped it yet. And I'm pretty confident that we'll see members of the community take that forward. There will be a sign-up form that is getting distributed probably next week from the CM team. So look out for that. Anyone interested in getting access, you will need approved access by us to get access to this data warehouse. So be on the lookout for that. We'll get the sign-up form rolling, and then anxious to kind of get this out in the community's hands and see what people build with it. Over time, long term, we do want kind of a dashboard that surfaces a lot of this data. But again, I'm very hopeful based on community interest and many people who've come forward in the past and wanted access to this data that we see some community-run dashboards get created.
All right. Okay, Crazy Crypto has another question. Which comes first, Quest's Jousting or Shadowcorn's Act 2, and when?
It's a race between Quests and Shadowcorn staking, the Shadowcorn staking minigame. So I do not know which one will happen first. They're both kind of targeting mid-October. And then Jousting is going to follow those. So that's kind of the sequence on that front. And then next week, we have targeted the release of the seed bag update, which also includes the energy update, which means the less breeding points a unicorn has, the more energy it has. And we have many planned systems that will take advantage of that. And I think it's going to be a great way for us to rebalance some things in the coming kind of weeks and months. So you've got that kind of update, then you're likely going to see Again, it's kind of a toss-up right now whether or not the Shadowcorn staking minigame will go live before quests or not. We're really, really hopeful that we can have a fun kind of Halloween event around quests. So that's the current push and kind of the sequence of releases.
All right. Okay, now for our last question from L. How far along are the jousting and racing game loops as far as development? Are you still considering a build the arena event for the jousting arena he mentioned before? He also mentioned like possibly crafting things that will allow people to get a percentage of the entry fees or something.
Yeah, so racing is still on paper. The team's full focus is quests and jousting, and everything kind of on the living roadmap that is marked as in progress. Somebody in general chat, please throw that link out there for whoever is curious on this front. We are still considering a build the arena event and making that a bit of a competition where the winner can receive some of the treasury rake. That is still absolutely under consideration, and I think would be a really, super, super fun event. The gameplay, the jousting gameplay trailer, again, is in-engine Unity footage, which I think is probably targeting the first week in October at this point. That's going to show you how far along that loop is. I think in a very clear and exciting way.
All right, so those are all the questions that we have for now. We do have a couple more questions, but we are hitting our time. We do have a hard cap. For any other questions, feel free to ask us over at the general chat. And that concludes our weekly town hall number 16. We'll see you next week for weekly town hall number 17. We'll post a recording of this town hall on our socials if you would like to give it a re-listen. Don't forget to share this with your friends and fellow unicorn fam who couldn't make it. And if you have more burning questions, feel free to reach out on our support channels, the mod support channel and the Acid Depths channel. This has been Sparkly Unicorn with co-host Witty Unicorn. Good morning, good night, and see you in game, Unicorn fam. Thank you so much for your time, Aaron. Can we get an ooh-woo?
Ooh-woo! As always, it was wonderful. I'll see everyone next week.
See you, everybody. Ooh-woo. Witty, you are not exempt. Are you feeling better? Oh, bro. Get some sleep, my guy. I have like an hour left. Get some sleep. I'll cover. Get some sleep. Sleep, 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 sleep. Okay? Bye, everybody.